Hello, I am Radagast, and this is Global Mission to Peace with Mystic View. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And we're going to discuss, the topic is power. What it is, what it's not, and how getting it wrong is problematic, because how we conceive things, how we hold things within our psychology can limit us in certain ways. I would think that for me, one of the biggest negative things about perceiving power incorrectly is because when we think of God as a concept, and basically God is equated with the ultimate power. So what we think about power affects how we think about God. And I think that sometimes some of those projections are part of why people are not comfortable with the concept of us being a fractal or an emanation, and therefore God is within us. Jesus himself said, I think he said, ye are gods. Or I know it's certainly said in other parts of the scripture of the people of the book. But basically, the things that I do, you will do, and greater. And so, there was clearly an equating, at least in Christian tradition, with him as God. The whole Trinity is based about him being part of the tri-manifestation of God. So I'm not. Usually, I get real long-winded in the beginning, but I want to bring Shelley in fairly early this time.
Well, thank you for that opportunity, because I want to invite all of our viewers to, as we're talking, just check in with yourself and notice where you are feeling powerful, and also notice where this is the concept, try to notice where you're not feeling empowered. And then as we move through our discussion, we'll check in again at the end and just see if there's been some shift in the sensation of how you register your own power. Once we name it, right, it's the observer effect.
Okay. So I really believe there's a fairly negative connotation with power, where basically where it really equates much more to the ability to control and command. It's kind of hierarchical. It's just basically dysfunctional and a little diseased in its concept. And I want, there are a lot of different traditions that that really, whether it's creation or anything, they give us hints. Within the mythos of any religion is some really good material. And there's, some of them kind of say that in the beginning, the waters were still and God moved upon the waters. So what we're really kind of getting is that, to me, for power, the biggest thing is stillness is not power, movement is power. And in certain cases, God breathed upon a water, which kind of derives, at least in the Hebrew, from ruach, which is kind of an outpouring, but it's an outpouring of breath, spirit breath. And so really what there seems to me, power is really the movement. And I would like to think it's about the principle of self-organization. And so as that self-organization spreads itself to be coherent, that coherency, as it multiplies, is about self-organizing systems. You want to come in?
Yeah, you're describing some of our very own bodily systems. Our biology operate exactly in this fashion, where when they become coherent, they become powerful in a sense of dominion, not domination. So it's dominion working for the greater good of the body, obviously. And it's the same as we can think of it in terms of light as well. The laser beam, as opposed to radiation, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, what makes the difference between a laser and normal light is focus or kind of real coherence in the patterns.
Right. The photons of a laser beam kind of overlap their boundaries, and then they behave as one single photon holistically. That, like that's quantum coherence.
Well, they become organized.
Yeah.
And they self-organize when given the right conditions.
Yes, they do.
All these thoughts, because I'm really trying to obviously create good metaphors, because metaphors, I feel, are the way to kind of get these across in language.
Well, let me help you out here.
Look.
It's when they're at rest, they're a little bit in their kind of haphazard, each doing their own thing, but it's when they're stimulated. It's when there's a frequency brought about that causes them to take on the coherent or the self-organization properties.
And speaking again, as movement and power equating with each other, let's take I always like the human body as the template for humans to look at for organization. I mean, we could look at a hive as organized, but that's a kind of an insect expression. Not that there aren't lessons that they could learn, but anytime I think we're going to talk about humanity and how we organize properly, we should look at the body. So I think, we have the major organs of the body that we can't live without. The liver, the kidneys, the heart. You got to have at least one kidney. You got to have these things, or your body will not exist. But there's one organ of the major organs, and the brain will be included in that, of major organs. But there's one organ that is different than all the other organs, and that's the heart. And what makes the heart different is it's the one that moves. Matter of fact, it's very definite. The definition of its function is its movement. The moment it doesn't move, the system starts to shut down quickly, and very often non-movement of the heart is clinically dead. Yes.
Are you going somewhere?
No. Actually, no. I saw you prepping up, and I was ready to bring you in again.
Well, doesn't that just remind you of Dan Winter telling us on one of our recent shows about the pericardium, how the 7 arrows, the muscles of the pericardium, the heart, create a very specific compression that's essential to phase conjugation. That's essential to order, to lifting the system into the next higher level of this order.
And just so this is a term of Dan's, and of course we use it, but phase conjugation is when things can come together into coherence. Nesting is one form of it. He often has these kind of two slinkies, one larger than the other, and he can take the other one and make it disappear into the smaller one can disappear into the big one. It nests because it phase conjugates. And when we have phases, and then when they conjugate is when they come into coherence. That's what a phase conjugation largely is. And it's behind bliss. And bliss is when the universe, which is self-organizing, but until it's organized, there's a certain amount of wobble. I'm going to say a little bit of chaos. But once it gets its sweet spot, there's bliss. Do you have something to come in here with?
Well, and with the bliss comes surrender. And so surrender is very powerful. It is also movement, but it's not the giving up kind of movement. That is not the surrender that empowers. But to experience surrender into the higher order gives tremendous potential. Yes, and well, in many ways, again, the human body is powered by the movement of the heart. Now, so this means the heart kind of has supreme power.
Now, again, when we get into the psychological construct, this would mean like the heart could sit there going, hey, if you don't give me my way, I'm just going to shut down. You can, imagine a heart. And this, again, this is where we're bringing the human body and how we as humans can learn lessons from our biology. Can you imagine a heart that is actually controlling things, that it within its existence and its knowing of itself, there's like this kind of concept, if you liver and brain and kidneys, if you don't do it my way, I just might shut down. And so that's to me what I call negative power, which is often how humans have projected power. Now, I think some of this comes out of certain ways God is represented in certain texts. We'll say we won't single any certain texts out. But I do know, like, there are some words that have been associated with God have been words like jealous. Now, again, that's like almost like, if you think of your heart, thinking that, they would be jealous if any of the other organs were more important than itself or something. And then if they did, it might do something nasty to the organs. That doesn't make sense to me. Matter of fact, it was around probably about the age of 14 when I started not liking jealousy in other people, especially not in myself. And as I grew older, jealousy became less and less acceptable. So as I matured emotionally, the concept of a jealous God became less and less acceptable. And again, I really believe that that once again, the scriptures, have man's influence. And I just think that the psychology of humanity and with its not understanding the love of power, that the real power is love, and that love moves. And that's how it demonstrates its love, by moving, by creating action.
I love that analogy.
Well, thank you. Just came to me.
That's awesome.
And so and one of the reasons why this focus on power and also the focus on God is because, again, when we think about power, for most of us, the ultimate power is the Creator. Okay? All right? I work with that. But we have, I feel then we have to be careful about our definition of power. And when going to scripture, we look at least two of the temptations of Jesus. Now, a lot of, what people often don't understand, that you can't be tempted with something you wouldn't like to do. Maybe it's not a temptation. If it's not something you don't want to do, it's like, hey, if you do this, I'll dunk you in a cold lake. Oh, no. Oh, see, I tempted him with a cold lake and he turned it down. No. Okay, so temptation doesn't work with things you don't want. Temptation is only the things you want. And if you look at some of the temptations, it was like, oh, let's turn a stone into bread. Okay, so I guess a hungry person who might have had the ability to do that said no. So again, we could start getting into psychologies. Flying was another one of the temptations. So maybe that was an ability, but humans walk, birds fly. But anyway, so I really feel that one of the blockages for people to own their divinity, if you say, like, I'm God too, right away, if your definition of God is power and control and doing magical things other than the magic of creation that we got put in, you get confused. How can I be God? I can't make that person drop dead. Oh, is that really something you want to do? But again, power often comes with the ability to do nasty things more often than not.
And often to yourself as well.
And
inevitably.
And so I think often a lot of people, why they almost have trouble sitting with their own divinity, is because they don't have the power to do things that are not face conjugate.
Well, how about this? How about if it's actually their brain interfering with the coherence coming from the heart? How about if it's actually a bunch of interference waves because of the thoughts that you had earlier and the thoughts that are, projected onto you by mass media and the thoughts projected onto you by friends and family, and all of those things are creating interference waves that you create you to no longer be actually moving with your heart, honoring your heart, moving in alliance and coherence with that heart. This really, it's just a derailment from your power. It's not that you don't have power, it's that you've allowed your thoughts to interfere to such an extent that you're not standing in your power. If you just listen to your heart and allowed that to lead you, you could be very calm, clear, and completely in power, empowered.
And I really believe our main power is creation. To create things. I mean, once again, if we were created in the image of a creator, it makes us creators. So what are we going to create together? And I like one of the analogies, and one of the things that recently came to me is, let's talk about the creation of the United States. And supposedly after the convention, Benjamin Franklin was greeted by a woman who said, "What kind of government do we have?" To which he replied, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." In which case we kind of abdicated, if everybody's talking about the cabal, well, it's obviously we had a republic and we couldn't keep it. Or it's been kept very poorly, if it does still exist. And I think it still exists on paper, but, the republic was a living entity, an organism.
Right, what are we experiencing?
So similarly, I kind of see in the creation story where, the world was created in 6 days, and on the seventh day, God rested. They don't talk about him picking up again on Monday. All right. It was kind of like, to me, it's almost like the Constitutional Convention. Basically, a world was created, and it was given to us if we could keep it. All right. I mean, I like my saying, the world is in God's hands, and God's hands are on the end of all our arms. So we come back to creation. And so really, I mean, a lot of what I get from, the metaphors or the imagery of the creation story was this, everything that was not within our realm to create, the elementals, the whole ecosystem that we would be placed into was created for us. And then we were put into it. But once we were put into it, because that was the last thing, it was on the last day of creation. Once we were put into it, the republic was created. It was now given to us to keep it. And I've actually started using this a little bit when people talk, well, the aliens are doing this to us. The aliens are doing this to us. That's because we're letting them. I mean, the elite's doing this to us. The elite's doing the cabal, blah, blah, blah. Again, you were given a planet was created for you. You were placed into it, and it's yours if you can keep it.
Yes, and the sun comes up brand new every single day, and we all get another chance every single day to be creative.
And so now we come back to power. Whether or not people are abdicating their power to make this world what it could be. In other words, when creation was turned over to us, and that's what I really see. I see the creation of the world, the creation of us, and then the ball was given to us. And that's why I think redefining power, first of all, knowing what kind of power we don't want, because most of us who are not happy with our lot in life is the power of corporations, the power of this, power of government to boss our lives, all these things that are kind of laid upon us, things that we don't want to experience. And so here we, again, these people seem like they're the powerful ones. And are they using this power nicely? No, they're using it abusively. That's because it's not really what power is.
Right. And we do have to consider balance. We do have to consider, some people have power in one area and they are completely without any power in other areas. So with the motion of power, the requirement is that it's maintained in balance.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that?
I had something right on my, I mean, it's really interesting to have like these things just well up and then all of a sudden they get kind of dissipate for a second. Go ahead. Do you have anything? You have something?
So think about the power of the sun. Think about the power of the sun gods as they kind of personified that power for us. And where does that exist in your life? You know, you could even just simply own it by thinking about the power of every cell. You can just, you know, think of ATP. You could just find power in your own physical experience every minute of every day, and how natural it flows when you're in tune with it, attuned with it. And the more attuned that, you know, attuned, fatten your aura, feed that which strengthens you and which builds you. And that takes us back to the bliss experience. And that is power. That's ultimate power.
And so I was thinking about, even in negative power concepts, that when we look at, we'll call them, you know, the elite. Well, I don't like the word elite at all. The controllers, I like that much better. And because we're meant to be the elite. And I mean that by elite performance, elite love. You know, elite is like an elite athlete. You know, an elite athlete doesn't mean they come from a wealthy family. It means that they've taken their game up to an elite performance level. And that's, to me, what elite should mean. Back in my Mod Whiz days, I made a tape. I made a video on that, redefining elite. But like I said, even with negative power, when you get down just to numbers, who the controllers are versus who the population is, number-wise, we outpower them. And I'm talking about this in a negative sense, but it could also work in a positive sense. We have the power or the movement of numbers, but what we don't have is coherence.
Right.
This is where our power is lost, because we're not phase conjugating. We're not nesting in with each other. And many times, often when you get down to kind of like the town level in the dysfunction, much of the dysfunction is family against family. Hatfields versus McCoys. You know, that's not the government. You know, it's not the government versus the government. That's two neighbors or two families at each other's throats.
It would be so simple to self-organize. It is as simple as letting love lead the way. That's as simple. If you based every decision and action on, is this loving or is this not loving? There, instantly the entire planet is phase coherent, locked in.
Yes.
It's that simple. It is that simple.
Yes, and so one of the big differences with the controllers is they work with each other, and that's where their power comes from, because they're more coherent. They're not absolutely coherent. They're somewhat they have their own dysfunctions, but they're more coherent, and the more coherent wins as far as being the ability to do something, because you can't do anything when you're not coherent. You're dissipated in many ways. And so we kind of come back to centrifugal or centripetal. And centripetal gathers itself into itself. And in that gathering, you actually have an output. It's kind of like how 0-point energy works. It just kind of gathers what's there. And then once it kind of reaches a certain point, it gathers so much. There's so much coming in, there's actually an output. So centrifugal is just whipping everything out. Centrifugal is pulling out. And so in many ways, we, as the populations, because we're at odds with each other, we're kind of acting centrifugally, or spinning out. We're not pulling together and creating coherence. We're actually taking what could be coherent parts and spreading them out more and more, creating distance. So the real purpose of this talk about power is so we can have it. So that, because we have a world that is starting to split apart. We see, you know, it's centrifugally just spinning out. And if it's going to self-organize at some point again, because that's the nature of anything that's not going to just completely obliterate. So if this planet's going to stay together, if humanity is going to stay on the planet, it's going to have to self-organize again. And it's really a matter of who's going to self-organize. And I would like to recommend to everybody out there that we, the people, the population, self-organize. And we get that through loving each other, by having dialogues and finding places that we don't face conjugate through those dialogues, and with love find out how we manage to do that. I mean, a heart doesn't work like a liver, but it works in the same body. They have completely different functions, but they have found a way to function the way they want to and find coherence, which produces our body and our biological systems.
And charity begins at home. So you have to start treating yourself with this respect. You have to start making your life about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't wait for somebody outside of you to bring some kind of organization to you. And in fact, we don't even have to think about forming groups. If each person just took it upon themselves, that would be the stimuli that caused us all to then vibrate at that same frequency, and that is self-organization.
I mean, when we look at something like Child Protective Services, I mean, why do we have to have a Child Protective Services? Why are children endangered by their own parents? What kind of craziness is that? And so, I mean, and the reason I kind of bring these things up, because as Pogo said, we've seen the enemy and it is us.
Mm-hmm.
And we could choose to be our own best friends, but it comes from being coherent and stop, you know, and the various reasons. Oh, well, I'm dysfunctional. Oh, the cabal made me do it. Oh, it's the pressures of working. Or, you know, that's why I beat my kids. You know, I mean, there's these endless, people say their reasons. I find them as excuses. They're causative factors, but again, we have the power of choice. And how we react to stresses. Does it bring out the best in us, or does it bring out the worst in us?
Absolutely. And so I would invite everybody to just be in a silent space and feel in your own bodies and in your own lives where you are having that centrifugal effect, where you can feel your energy flinging out of control. And just take a moment to feel that, and then feel the opposite. The equal and opposite exists somewhere in your life. So just take a moment to become aware, track that down, find out where that is, and then develop more of that. You know, it's your choice. Just because things are out of control right now doesn't mean you have to throw up your hands in despair and go, yeah, that's beyond me. No, you have the ability right now with absolutely every aspect and element in your life to harness that.
Yes.
That's really all it is. It's that simple.
So we're going to take a quick break here.
Global Mission of Peace is a worldwide team of like-hearted individuals focused on a new paradigm of unity, peace, and understanding.
Unity with all people across all borders.
Peace with every faith and religion.
Understanding the true nature of the political, financial, and power structures of our world.
Our focus is not in changing these structures, but in offering a new reality, a new consciousness. Don't you think it's time?
Hello, we're back now, and after our little break, we're a little refreshed, and our topic is power. And so we're going to now maybe discuss a little bit about loss of power or leakage of power, what that might look like, what can we do to remedy it. And Shelley, as we were discussing during our little break, I know you have some ideas on that.
Well, it's pretty simple to find out where you are leaking your power. For example, where do you feel compelled that it's just easier to tell a little white lie? As soon as you do that, you feel it in your solar plexus, your gut, your heart. You feel that leakage of power. You've just put somebody else as being more important than your truth because you felt the best response would be to lie, and for all the reasons that you might want to do that. That's just one example, but it's very apparent in the frequency and the feeling in your body every time you leak your own power.
Yeah, I know from having lived in a lot of integrity for a while, that the few times that I've made the decision, usually just dealing in like little things where you might, quote unquote, the white lie, the more integrity that you're in, white lies become painful. It's like having a hook in you. It's really actually painful. So this is really, you actually can cultivate yourself and get more coherent by not practicing things that take your power. Lying is actually you not feeling empowered in your truth. And so therefore you modify what the truth is because you feel disempowered. And so think about just how nice it is where your truth is where you feel empowered and not having to contrive something that isn't real.
Even if it's that you don't know, that's the truth. Okay, I don't really know right at this moment. I'll get back to you, or maybe I won't, but that's the truth right now. But you know what? For people who can see auras, we can see when you're lying because you leak this kind of, I won't describe it, but there's an energy that travels through your aura that's visible.
Mm-hmm.
And as we become more perceptive to those subtle energies, it's pretty easy to pick up when people are lying, even if you don't see the color shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy. But the more important thing is not that you're caught in the lie, but how it depletes your energetic field, your aura. You are depleting, you're poisoning yourself.
And I also feel concepts, let's say, of absolute evil are also disempowering. Now, one of the interesting things is the original religion of Iran or Persia was something called Zoroastrianism. And actually, it was a monotheistic religion, theistic religion, and it was considered legitimate enough that when the Muslims did make their way into Persia and they investigated the native religion, they accepted it as one of the religions of the book. Now, anybody who, I know the average Western person knows zip about Islam and what it is. They might think they know because they've been listening to the news, been told things. And of course, not only are they're not being told about Islam, they're being told about what I call a satanic sect of Islam called Wahhabism, which comes out of Saudi Arabia. Where, of course, the one that where all people blow themselves up, because the Wahhabists tend to come out of the Sunni sect. Rather than call it Wahhabism, it's like, the Sunnis are the ones who blow themselves up. No, the Wahhabis are the ones who blow themselves up. Promises of virgins and other things. But just so quick for people to know about Islam, Islam has a respect for people of what they consider to be legitimate followers of God. They have a respect for it, and they also want them to kind of like do their own way. What we hear about, Sharia. If you really know about Sharia, what it is the Muslims wish that for themselves to be able to live under a system of Sharia, and they expect whatever other religions around them to use their system of jurisprudence. They don't expect everybody to be Sharia. They're asking for the ability for they themselves to live under that. And that's a discussion on itself, Sharia and understanding. There's actually quite a bit of wisdom built on a community and how it varies because it's based on interpretation of a fiqh who is an Islamic scholar who will kind of parse out. And that's why in certain Islamic countries, there's complete veiling, to minor veiling, to no veiling. It's based on, because Sharia adjusts to what they think is the wisdom of the land. I mean, it's really very organic and based on the local ummah or Islamic community. I hope I'm getting this right. If I'm not, the ambassador I'll hear from the ambassador. But anyway, so you have Zoroastrianism. And in primitive Zoroastrianism, and to me, it's religions in their most primitive sense are always the cleanest, because this is before the priest, this is before the person who actually came up with some of these brilliant ideas dies, and it's left to the people to carry on. And usually the moment the founder dies is the moment the religion starts to lose coherence and start becoming entropic. Just use some of these terms here. But in the original concept of Zoroastrianism, there was no concept of good or evil. But there was a sense of these beings, which in certain places might be considered jinn. They called them devas at that time. And there's been some changing of the words, who's what. There's devas, ashurs, and who's who. And then it seemed like after he died, they flipped the words. That happens anyway. But if we get back to primitive Zoroastrianism, rather than there being good devas or bad devas, they had the difference between the devas was one group of devas would give you counsel that would be good counsel. In other words, if you followed that advice, which I'd like to think is advice of your heart, you would have good consequences. In other words, if you followed this counsel, things would go well for you. There was another group that gave bad counsel. And if you followed that counsel, your consequences would be bad consequences, because consequences is another neutral term that everybody thinks, oh, you're going to suffer the consequences. No, you can also, inherit the consequences in a good way. Consequences is with the sequence. And but to me, the moment, so what it is by not identifying good or evil, and you have just basically kind of counsel that's going to benefit you or counsel that's not going to benefit you, it gives you the power of choice. And the moment you start positing evils, oh, the devil made me do it. Well, where's your power? Does the devil have more power than you? And it kind of it gives an out. It's a cop out. And so I really feel that spirituality is really about owning your power, and it's about the power of the choices that you make in your life. And I really feel that when you're really conflicted, go into your heart, because I really feel the heart is the portal. That's the God portal. And that's where you will hear the counsel that will benefit you. In your head, you'll hear both counsels. In your heart, you'll only hear one counsel.
Okay, so what do we know about this? We know to thine own self be true. We've known that because when you speak your own truth, you activate a rejuvenation process. That's the centripetal field, creating rejuvenation. And you can even take that back to a time reversal into wholeness. Mm-hmm. So secondly, man, know thyself. That was the oracle at Delphi.
Yes.
The Apollo. Man, know thyself. So just those two concepts right there should take us straight to the heart, which is where our truth resides. And our truth can change. Today it's this based on everything I've experienced. Well, that's fine. And tomorrow you've got a little bit more experience. And so maybe it's going to shift or change in some way. But it's to own that and to respond honestly from there, because now you're creating rejuvenation and strength in your own field.
Well, also there was another saying in the temple, in the oracle of Delphi. One was know thyself, and the other one was nothing in excess.
Yes, nothing in excess.
And of course, what that wisdom is about the self-organizing or centripetal energy, which you kind of see represented in the yin-yang symbol. Because part of being centripetal is you can't have too much on one side or the other, or you'll start to wobble. You won't have that coherence. So you can see why nothing in excess. And so in many ways, certain people can take doing good to an excess where they actually lose coherence. Some people will deny themselves to do others good, but often when you examine that, it's partially because they want to be able to think that they're good rather than just knowing they're good and doing good things. And so that nothing in excess is another wisdom to knowing thyself.
Hey, you know what another inscription was from that very same temple? Was 3 epsilons. And epsilon, as we know, is the number 5 numerically. So I'm not saying that's all there is, but 555 is right there.
Ah, all right. We really like.
Well, we could go a lot deeper, but we won't because we want to be focused on how to bring this home and make this of utility to our viewers.
Yes, and I think, and we're going to kind of come to the crux of recognizing our divinity is often because we are externalizing the power and also kind of putting some jealousy in there. There's a certain aspect of owning our divinity as being blasphemous. You know, like you're insulting God by saying that you too are God, rather than understanding yourself as a fractal of God. You know, there's a greater coherence, but you are a fractal of that coherence. And again, it's about knowing thyself, nothing in excess, and also about what you think about power. I think that allows it to balance, and then one sees, no, it's not a blasphemy. It's a great blessing. But many people, if they do say it, they do say it in a way that could be considered blasphemous, because there's I'm special. You know, there's a certain, there is a specialness, but again, it's kind of an inherited something that is meant to be shared. The coherence comes from all of us doing this together. Anyone standing up above the other with a certain amount of pride, you could call blasphemous. There's an illness, there's a disease to that quality of many people say, I am God. But again, this comes from not understanding the Creator, not understanding its source and its voice in our hearts. And go ahead, Sean.
Well, how many places in the Bible does it say, God is light, God is love? And when you're not aligned with that, are you not telling God, oh, man, you really screwed up, buddy. I got to take over here and fix this. Mm-hmm. You know, is that not what we're all just saying? Every time that we are not aligned with love, which is light.
So the real power is love, and love is coherent. And it is about, and we, the people, if we really want to make this world a better place and be on our own global mission of peace, we're going to, that mission requires our coherence and working together. Our taking our own power, our own ability that God's hands are on the end of all our arms, and understand that creation was handed over to us, and we better start listening to our hearts and start creating. And then we will live on the planet we were meant, that was envisioned for us, that was planned for us, that was set up for us. When we start looking at all the go ahead, Shelley, I saw your mouth open. Go ahead.
I wanted to add in, it's our personal mission of peace is where it begins.
And apparently we've been messing up for a little bit. I mean, in almost every instance, what any of the birth of religions was an attempt, even with their laws, was an attempt to kind of interrupt the chaos with something that had some form, that had some coherence. As you know, Muhammad basically was a social movement. Islam was based on the ummah, the community. Jesus was trying to form a community. He wasn't out to form a religion. He was out to create the kingdom of heaven, which is like, you know, a kingdom, it's a community, it's an ummah, wherever you want, you know, it's about coherence, and it's about us being empowered. And if we feel that we're chafing under certain laws, please realize that somebody thought it was a better idea than the way we treated each other. And people might go, what do you mean? And I'm going to bring it back down again to the child that needs to be removed from its own parents. Because, I mean, you know, it's like, I don't like child services. I think it's an intrusion of government. But when you're looking at this, what I think is not a great idea, but when you look at the situation that created it, you realize that it's an improvement on the situation that created it. And who can uncreate the dysfunction? It's us. The power is on us to become coherent and become loving and become basically sovereigns. And that's the other thing. If God is the sovereign of the universe and we were created in its image, that means we're sovereigns of our space that was given to us. And sovereignty is about responsibility. Again, a republic. A republic was given to you if you can keep it. The world was given it to us if we can keep it. And part of that is keeping ourselves coherent, empowered, in love, in order. I think the message got made.
Okay, but here's a little bit of good news, because it's not all that difficult. You know, each one of those sun gods, whether it was Apollo, each one of them represented a time, an era. And then the next sun god came in and it started a new era. Well, we have completed this era. The past paradigm has been completed. And it is time to take, like literally where our solar system is in our galaxy, it literally is supporting our stepping into this new era.
All right. And so I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I'll say goodbye. Shelley, why don't you say goodbye, everybody?
Yep. I'll look forward to seeing everybody again soon.
God bless you all. Please recognize that God's hands are on the end of all our arms, and creation is how we can, and loving is how we can reclaim our power. So let's try to reconfigure it. And goodbye until next time.